All right, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the workflow, Adobe Lightroom Classic to Adobe Photoshop. Today we're going to take a look at the workflow, Adobe Lightroom Classic to Adobe Photoshop. Now don't get confused, there's actually different Lightroom programs on the Creative Cloud. One is called Classic, which makes it sound like it's an old version of the program. It's not. And then there's just Lightroom. So Lightroom is made for a tablet phone, though you can use it on a desktop or a laptop computer. However, Lightroom Classic has cataloging and more stuff built into it, and that's really optimized for working on a computer or a laptop. So in this series, I'm going to take you step by step, and we're going to take the memory card. How do you import? Well, we have some new cool features like AI culling inside of Lightroom, what I do inside of Lightroom, and then we're going to take you over to Photoshop, how to use Photoshop, and then what I do in Adobe Photoshop. So this series of video is very in-depth, and I take you step by step by step. So I teach college classes. This is the exact same process that I use for those classes. I use these as supplemental material. So if someone misses a class or needs a refresher, they can simply just watch these videos, and I'm going through the exact same material in class that you're getting here on YouTube. So in this first video, what we're going to take a look is inside of Lightroom Classic, and we're going to look at the preferences and do some basic setup because the program doesn't always come exactly how you want it. So I'm going to show you what I change, why I change it, and what your options are, because just because I set something doesn't mean that you might want to set something different. So I'll give you my opinions on that. So after we take a look at the preferences, I'm going to go over the screen, what everything does, just so you have the basic operation of the program down. Then in the next video, what we're going to take a look at is how to get that memory card and then import it into the system. And then once we've done that, we're going to look at how to cull those images. Culling is just simply the process of finding what's good and what isn't good. So hopefully you'll follow along with us on this journey, learning Adobe Lightroom Classic to Adobe Photoshop. All right, welcome. This is Adobe Lightroom Classic. I am working on a Mac, but if you're working on a PC, that's fine. Most everything is going to be the same. Occasionally there are some quick keys, and I will try to tell you what the quick keys are in both PC and Mac as we work through the program. Now, if this is the first time you've opened up Lightroom, you're not going to see any images. That's okay. And when you install the program, you can see up here, this is my catalog. And essentially, this is usually installed somewhere on your internal hard drive, which is fine, right? You're not going to have any information here, and we'll get into what that stuff means. So up here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up into Adobe Lightroom Classic. And I understand this is not fun if people don't want to do this, but we're going to go into the preferences because there's a few things we want to set up here before we get started in the program. All right, we are in preferences right here, and right here we're in the general tab. And so I'm going to go through here and just tell you what I change and when I change it. So right now, there's nothing you need to do. So we've got some presets, and so we're going to be using the Adobe default. You can do your camera settings, or you can import some presets if you want. So in this case, we're just going to go ahead and use the Adobe default. You will see those in the develop module later on. There's nothing else that I see right here that I want to go ahead and change, and we're going to go to external editing. So you can see right here, it is for Adobe Photoshop. And so when we send this photo out, where do I want it to go? So in this case, I have selected Adobe Photoshop 2026. And I want the file format to be PSD, which is the Photoshop format. The color space that I'm going to be working in is Adobe 1998. We will get into color spaces. We now have the HDR. Go ahead and just leave that at the HDR P3. We're going to be using the bit depth of 16 bits. That makes a huge difference in photography. So if you have not set your camera to shoot raw photos and you don't know what that means, the first thing I would suggest to everybody is to go into your image quality and change it from JPEG to RAW. I will give you a simple explanation without going on to a whole bunch of information here. A 8-bit image, which is our other option we can see right there, essentially has about 256 shades of gray. Now, people are going to think, well, then 16 bits probably has 512, but that is not correct. It has 64,500. In general, that's not the exact number, but it's close enough. So 16 bits has a whole lot more information than an 8-bit image, and so that's why we're shooting in RAW. So my resolution is 300. The reason I use 300 is because most general printing is done with a 300 pixels per inch resolution. So right over here, we could change that to 300 because that would make sense, but I don't really use HDR, so that's okay. We're not going to be using any compression. Compression will be more likely if you were using a JPEG file. If you have a secondary editor, in this case, I don't have one set up, you could come in here and select that and also send to a complete different program if you wanted. All right, next thing we're going to go is to file handling. So in this case, it says import DNG creation. So when you shoot RAW, all the camera companies have their own file type, right? So years ago, Adobe wanted everybody to use this DNG, which is digital negative. And the camera companies all said no. So you'll notice Canon is CR2, CR3, and then NEF for Nikon, and so on, okay? One of the issues that people don't like about those RAW files is it creates what we call a sidecar file. And that file name is going to be exactly the same as your image. So if you had an image, let's say this up here was guitar.cr2, below that, after we import, there would be another file that said guitar.xmp. And the cool thing about a RAW file is you can never overwrite it. And when we work in Adobe Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, which is a RAW conversion editor, it never actually changes any of the information in your original file. It saves all that to that XMP file. It's a tiny text file. It doesn't take up any room. So when you make an adjustment, and I'll show you this and talk about it more, it stores the information in this XMP file. So when you open it back up, it refers back to that XMP file. You can delete the XMP file, but as soon as you make another adjustment to that image, it's going to create another one just like it did before. So one of the things you can do with the DNG though, is it can store that XMP file inside of the DNG. So some people like to convert their RAW file, maybe CR2 NEF, to a DNG. And so this is the information. If you want to do that, you can do that here. So what size do you want the preview to be? DNG, enable fast load data, and then embed original RAW file. One of the issues is when a lot of times when you go from CR2 to DNG, it does compress it a little bit. So it gives you the option to do both. In my case, I don't use DNG, but you can just leave it set up how you want. Interface, there's nothing there that we're going to go ahead and change. Performance, okay, this is where we start to get into stuff that matters. So I have a little bit older Mac Intel computer, and I have mine set to auto, but use graphics processor. If you have a good one, that's going to be helpful. Lightroom does actually use it, and especially now that we have so much AI, that really refers to a graphics processor. So using it is going to make a big difference, but you can come in here and set it how you want. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it on auto. Right here, we have camera raw cache settings. And so you can see right here, this is what we call the location of the path. So it's users, all right, library, cache, Adobe, camera raw, 2. Okay, so that's the location where they're going. Maximum size, 20 gigabytes. So when you're working and you open up an image and it creates a little preview, it has to store that in a location. And it refers to it all the time. That's what cache does. It takes information that you use all the time. Instead of recreating it every time you click on it, it stores it. So the more of that you have, the more beneficial it's going to be able to store that information. However, these can get massive, all right? And so if you don't have a large internal hard drive, you're going to want to change that location and store it maybe on an external hard drive. If you're going to do that, make sure you use an SSD, not a traditional hard drive, because it's going to be slow if you do it. But you can purge your cache and you can choose your location right here. Same thing with video. We've got that information right there. Yes, this stuff is important right now. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. The next thing we're going to come over here is to Lightroom Sync. We're not going to change anything. We've got display. We're not going to change anything. And network, we're not going to change anything. So we're going to go ahead and click off that, but we got to go to one more option. So I forgot to mention one thing. So right up here, we've got our color space. And if you don't understand what color space is, this is an important factor in photography. So when they came around with digital photography, yeah, that was great. But how do you know what you saw was what you were seeing, right? So we needed some sort of standards to calibrate monitors to. So what I would see in New York is exactly what I would see in Los Angeles. So the International Standards Organization came up with some color spaces. Now they were a little bit different at time, and you can see this one was created in 1998. So the typical one that we see on the web and that most people use is sRGB. And that would be right here. So sRGB would be your most typical. Usually it doesn't have all this information, but this is your profile. That's what we use on the web. So if you do work on an image in Adobe and you want to put it on the web, you're going to need to convert it. I will show you that process built into Lightroom and Photoshop, so the process is really easy. But in this case, I'm going to work in Adobe. Some people work in ProPhoto. So why do I work here and not work anywhere else? Because ProPhoto has colors that basically even my 5K monitor can't see, isn't really helpful. Adobe, though, an older profile is about the exact profiles. So I have a 5K Retina monitor, and my monitor, when calibrated, can see 98% of the Adobe profile, which is pretty much as perfect as what you're going to get. A newer profile is Display 3. Look, it doesn't matter particularly which one of these profiles you're using, but when you calibrate your monitor, you're calibrating them to that color space, or you're managing the color profiles. I know this is complicated, and if you want to read more about doing this, if you go to my website, shutterbugacademy.net, and you go to the miscellaneous thing, I have a whole bunch of articles where I write about this and explain what I'm doing. But if you want to print an image and then have it printed out and look exactly like how you saw it, you need to use this process. The monitor calibrator that I do use is the Datacolor Spider Elite. So this is Adobe Lightroom Classic. And if we take a look out here, this is our catalog name where it says John Whitehead. Over here are our different modules. So we have a library, a develop, a map, a book, a slideshow, a print, and a web. So library is what we call a browser. It is similar to Adobe Camera Raw, Photo Mechanic. All you do is look at your images, essentially. It's just a looker adder. So you can look at your images to see which ones you like. When I click on this and I click right here for single view, it shows the preview down in the bottom left corner, bigger up here. So that's usually the way I'm going to do it. And so it allows me to just go through and look at my different images. Then if we come up here, we've got the develop module. Now, the develop module is where we manipulate or edit that photo. This program is actually exactly the same as Adobe Camera Raw. So if you've used Adobe Camera Raw, you will find the exact same things. It looks different. However, it basically does the exact same thing. So the map allows you to basically add metadata to your image. You can see over here, this is what we call metadata, and it will embed all this stuff into every single photo. So if you had like GPS on your camera and it was recording where you took the photo, it would automatically fill that out. In my case, so I could manually come in here and click where I took this photo. This really isn't anything that I care about, so I don't use it. So the next option is to create a book inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic. Look, these books go to Blurb. That's where they're printed. It's basically hasn't changed. I don't use Blurb, and most book companies have their own proprietary software that you use online. So it's not always helpful to use this, but if you want to make a book and send it to Blurb, this is what you would use. We're not going to go into this, and I don't use it. Hey, if you're looking for something new to wear, I have a company called T-Lab Designs where I design custom t-shirts and apparel. We make stuff for adults and children. The next module that we have here is slideshow, and it does exactly what it says. It allows you to create a slideshow inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic. And then after that, we've got our print and web. I'm not going to go into those. Print allows you to print from Lightroom, and web allows you to create a web gallery. It's really archaic. Like, they haven't changed the web module in years. And the web gallery that you would create is something that we haven't used in like 20 years. So truthfully, it's not very helpful. So what we're going to take a look at first is the library module. So I'm going to come back and click on that library module. The next thing that we have here is the navigator. And so you can see right here, it's showing us the preview of the image that we see right there. We've got the options here to fit, to go to 100% of the image. And it's showing us right now, we're viewing it at 33%. You could click on the image and it would zoom into that location at 100%, or then you can come back and just click fit and it would go back out. All right, so the catalog is probably the most important thing you need to learn today. However, it's also the most confusing to people. So the catalog is great for people that want to easily be able to find photos that they took a while ago at another time, because it saves all the information in the image metadata, which is, this is metadata right over here. I can click on this and it will show you all this stuff. So it saves a bunch of information and it's all searchable within the image. Also your file names, your folder names, which is really cool. However, if you're like me who takes so many photos that I fill up hard drives really fast, I then need to take some photos and move them. So when you move the photos, it gives you this. So if you look right here, it's got this nasty little exclamation mark. I call it giving you the finger. And essentially what that means is it can't find the photo. It still has the preview because it has saved it in that cache catalog. However, it doesn't know where the original image is. All I would need to do is navigate to the new location and then it would be able to find those photos, which isn't a huge deal. But if I don't know where the images are because I moved them a long time ago, you're going to have to search for them. So this is what can cause people problems. If you have images and you save them to an external hard drive, do not move them, because if you do, you ruin the path. Okay, and the path is where the location of the images are located. And if it can't find them, it gives you this little exclamation mark and it won't let you edit those photos. It will show you the preview, but when we go into the develop module, it won't let you do anything to those images. This is the number one thing I don't like about Lightroom Classic, but some people love it, and it has to do with my workflow. Right here is my catalog. This is a new catalog. So right now I've got 144 images in this catalog. Then we've got all synced photographs, any quick collections, and any previous imports. So if I clicked on previous imports, it would just go to the images that I previously imported into the system. This is the catalog. These are your folders. So this is my hard drive right here, usually where I'm putting the images at. So if I wanted to manually go to the folder where these images are, I would need to go ahead and select that location up there, right? So folders, catalog, they're completely different. If you want to close that, you can just simply click on those arrows. Collections are this. So let's say that this guy up here is my brother. He's not. And I take his picture at every show he goes to, and his name is Fred. So I would create a collection over here called Fred. And every time I import my photos, I'm going to have some good photos and bad photos. I can take the good photos of Fred and put them into the Fred collection. That way, at the end of the year, if we wanted to take a look at all the good photos of Fred, they're in that location and they're easy to find. It saves you from having to go through a whole bunch of different locations and folders to find images to put together into one collection. All right. Now, the trick with this is if you move the images, the collection isn't going to know where to find them, because when you put something in a collection, it doesn't move it to a new location. It just remembers the path of where they're at. Even though the images are in different folders, you see them in one location, but it's not putting them in a new location. All right. So we have collections and what we call smart collections. And the smart collections are just based on a variable. You can say, if I have this image right here, I'm going to give it 1 star. And so you can see right there, I got 1 star. And then I can say, hey, any image that I gave 1 star, put in the collection. And you can filter it to like anything you want. If you want to put all images that I shot at ISO 100 and f1.2, it would put them into that smart collection. Down here, we've got publish services. So this is simply just a way to export to services. So we will take a look at that later. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually go to the bottom here. So if you look, we've got a little arrow, but when I do that, it makes my dock pop up. Oh, we've got it so where the dock doesn't pop up. But there's a little arrow right there, all right? And it's faced out. And then if we come up here, you'll notice there's that same arrow. And then if we come over here, there's that same arrow. And then on the bottom, we have the same arrow. What that does is hide and close things. So since I don't have a dock on the right-hand side, I'm going to go over here to this. I'm going to click that arrow, okay? So I'm going to click it, and it's going to hide, all right? And so now I have more space for my images. This can be really helpful if you're working on a laptop. If I go over here and hover over it, it will open it back up. If I go away, it will close it. So it's a way to hide and close areas. I can do the same thing, and that's going to hide and close that. So if I hover over it, it shows. In this case, for tutorials, I'm just going to keep all my windows open because it makes more sense, but you can leave that up to yourself to how you want to do that. The last thing we're going to take a look at here are thumbnails. So we can use this little slider to make our thumbnails bigger or smaller. However, when I work in the program, I'm almost always using this view. So we have thumbnails down here, and when we click on it, it's going to show the image up there bigger. So the way I adjust this is I want you to watch my cursor. As I go down, so watch this. Right now I have the mouse pointer. If I go down to this line, we get this new little thing that's like a line with two arrows through it. If I left click and hold, it allows me to make my thumbnails bigger or smaller, and it will change the screen above it. So if you want to make your images or your thumbnail images larger or smaller, that's like the easiest way to do that. So that's the way to change that. Over here is going to change depending on what we're selecting over here, but we've got a histogram. So a histogram just simply shows you where the data is in your image. It also gives you your shooting data. So right there, we've got the ISO, focal length, f-stop, and shutter speed that we took. So next we have some assisted culling. We'll take a look at that in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. That is brand new for the program. Then we have Quick Develop. So Quick Develop is when you're in the library, it allows you to do some quick adjustments, especially if you're going to send images to a client or show somebody and maybe they're just a little dark. So you can come here and just do some quick basic adjustments and color balance or white balance of your image. We have right here an area where we can add keywords, keyword lists. So if I've already created some keywords, it gives me a list of keywords that I can add, and then the metadata to the image, okay? And so we'll take a look at all this different stuff, and we can scroll through. There's a whole bunch of information that we get here, and this is always going to change depending on what we're doing inside of the program. Right here, we have what we call grid view. Then we have like the single preview. So we're seeing single preview now, that's selected. And I guess it's called loop view. And if you look at that, it says loop view, and then in parentheses, it says E. That would be the quick key. So if you tap E, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to tap E on my computer, and you can see it switched over to single preview. And right here, we have the compare view. And right here, we have survey view. And right here, we have people view. Okay. We have some other options that we'll get into when we get into culling later on in the program. But that's the basic navigation of the computer that we have here inside of a Lightroom Classic. Well, that's it for the first video tutorial. I hope you learned a little bit about how to set up Adobe Lightroom and how the basic navigation of the program works. In the next video, we're going to take a look at how to grab that memory card and import your photos into the Adobe Lightroom catalog and then cull those images. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you found this video helpful. If you have any comments or questions, you can always leave those in the comment section below, and have an absolutely wonderful day. Hey, if you're looking for something new to wear, I have a company called T-Lab Designs where I design custom t-shirts and apparel. We make stuff for adults and children.